Do the red ones actually go faster? What the zogging heck? Of course the red ones actually go faster. See? Welcome back to the Red Ones Go Fasta. Old Big Mek here. And yes, indeed, the red ones do go faster, as you just saw. All right, what I am going on about is the other day I was in a conversation with Tactics, which is a super awesome YouTube channel all about competitively playing orcs. If you haven't checked it out, there will be a link down in the description below. Shout out to him. Awesome channel, awesome content. And this particular video was on playing the very, very tricky the Speed Freaks detachment that is current in 10th edition. I talked about it in my video that on the surface that detachment doesn't seem like it has a whole lot going for it, but it really does. But you really got to know how to play it. It is definitely a player's army and not a yeah, it's just not going to suffer mistakes. It's not going to suffer tactical errors. And yeah, recently an orc player did very, very well in a tournament with it, and Tactics went over all of that. The long and the short of it was, though, he named the the video "The Red Ones Go Fasta," and we were having our fun little chat about it. And he asked if this is established lore at this point, or if this is just like a thing that we do. And it's like, not only is it lore, it's a competitive rule. And I brought the proof. Let's get into it. And yeah, so I realize that the vast majority of you, in fact, over 50%, according to a couple of surveys I did, have been into Warhammer for less than 4 years, which makes sense. I mean, 2020, pandemic, all that stuff, people having inside hobbies, and then also just Games Workshop exploding with 8th, 9th, and 10th editions all being excellent introductions to Warhammer 40K and introducing new armies that everybody really loved. And yeah, the hobby has exploded, which is amazing, but it does mean that there is a whole lot of just not knowing history on things and background for new players. And that's totally cool. That's what old Big Mek is here for, is to teach you this kind of stuff. So we're actually going to go all the way back. This is WoD Orcs. This is a rule book from Rogue Trader. For those of you that are not familiar, Rogue Trader was the first edition of Warhammer 40K. Back then, Rogue Trader was very much an RPG game. It was a lot more D&D and a lot less Warhammer 40K. And things were really weird, and a lot of the lore from this time period was actually axed for 2nd edition when Warhammer 40K became an actual war game. And then even from there, things got refined and changed. And so there's a lot of things from Rogue Trader that aren't necessarily canon anymore. However, this is one of them, and I will talk about it and show you right here on the screen. So this is under the Evil Sun section. And you get right here to the bottom, and it says, like all orcs, they believe red vehicles go faster than vehicles of any other color. Thus, all an orc has to do to enhance the speed and performance of his bike or buggy is paint it bright red. Then no one's gonna catch up with ya. Now, this particular tome is a background tome more than an actual rule book, but right there it is in the lore, all the way back to the beginning in the mid to late 80s, which, by the way, if you want a copy of this book in hardcover like this, join my Patreon down below and shoot me a DM, and I can send you the link on where you can order this. Totally legal, but, you know, we've got to be a little careful with it. Reproduction tome. All right, moving on. All right, that moves us to 2nd edition. And this is Warhammer 40K, where it actually becomes a war game. Again, a lot of the lore changed, things got way more settled, and you started seeing actual codex books instead of like these, the weird tomes of background, and then all the rules were kind of together in these, all together meaning like multiple armies would be in one rule book. 2nd edition, you got into actual rules per army in their own book, along with the lore all together, kind of in that style that we know and love today. So yeah, this is really the genesis of 40K as we know it. And in the 2nd edition codex, there are a couple of mentions of the red ones going Fasta. First up here under the Evil Sons section, you can see, once again, Evil Sons wear red clothes and often paint their machines red too, firmly believing in the old proverbs that red ones go Fasta, and if it's red, then no one's gonna catch up with ya. And as you saw, that's where they start spelling it Wunz, W-N-Z, just like we have here on the channel. Now, they still have faster with an R, but as is commonly exploited here on the Orc channels, sometimes you don't pronounce things like the R in war, or WOG, sometimes coming out as G. Now, the second section is under Wazdaka Gutsmek, the Evil Sons mechanic and bad orc bike boy. Now, Wazdaka has been around for a long time and has been in the rules a whole bunch. Doesn't necessarily always end up in the codexes or have minis, but one of the things he has here is his speed test. Basically, Wazdaka is always going too fast. Now, nothing in here says anything about it being from the red, but this is where you started to see an actual rule making the orcs go faster. And that brings us to 3rd edition. 1987, 1998, depending on where you were in the world. 3rd edition comes out, and this is the edition that really catapulted 40K into more of a mainstream. This is also when I really started deep diving into it. Basically, even though 2nd edition was a tabletop war game and was starting to look more like what we know and love, there was still a lot of RPG elements to it, and people that were into tabletop gaming, at the time Battletech, classic Warhammer, things like that, didn't necessarily take it seriously until 3rd edition came out. When 3rd edition came out, all the rules changed, and the game really solidified as a tabletop game, and it got incredibly popular really, really fast. So this, again, is another kind of genesis point. But the rules here is where we finally start seeing it, the red ones go fast, to translate from lore to tabletop. Now, you find this rule in the back in the Orc Vehicle Upgrade section right here. Red paint job. An Orc vehicle with a red paint job adds +1 inches to all of its move distances. So, for example, a fast Orc vehicle with a red paint job could move 13 inches and still fire 1 weapon and or disembark troops, or move 25 inches and not fire at all. That's it. That's the whole rule. And again, back then, you could like move this half distance and shoot or disembark troops for everybody, or full distance. But yeah, you literally just added an inch to your orc movement as long as you actually painted your model red. This is one of the coolest rules in all of 40K history because it was a tactical advantage. It had no drawbacks, but you literally had to actually model it. And this isn't even like what you see is what you get, you know, with a weapon or something like that. This is the only time it's ever been stated that it has to be a specific paint color. I mean, sure, there's Codex Astartes and, you know, making sure your trim is the right color and following, you know, Rabute Gilliman's spreadsheet or whatever. But, you know, in the pantheon of things, you've always been able to paint your army however you want and run them as something. If you wanted to create your own Dark Angels army and they were bright ass yellow, that's totally okay because they were, you know, a successor chapter or whatever. This was, you couldn't go, well, my orcs are colorblind, so they painted it green. No, you actually had to physically paint it red. And I mean, how cool is that? And the really, really cool part about this rule is it continued on. Here is the 4th edition Orcs Codex. Once again, you changed editions, you changed rules, things have moved along. The game is developing and expanding, and you see it again. First of all, once again, here in the lore for Evil Sons, you see them talking about believing in the old orc adage that red ones go Fasta. Now you see Fasta with the A, but ones has changed to the English spelling instead of W-U-N-Z. But yeah, still in the lore, but more importantly, still in the upgrades. Again, once again, vehicle upgrade section, red paint job. Orcs believe that a vehicle that has been painted red can outstrip a similar vehicle that isn't. As odd as it may seem, they are quite right. Orc vehicles with red paint jobs add +1 to their move in their movement phase, but do not incur penalties for this extra inch. So yeah, here you go, an addition change where the vehicle rules changed completely. As you saw, there was no more of that, like you can go double the distance thing. That was gone. Now you only have a 12-inch move, but you just add an inch onto it. Again, you actually had to paint your vehicle red. It was so, so, so cool. One of the best house rules during this era was if you were an orc player and you were playing against somebody else that had red vehicles, even if they weren't orcs, like Blood Angels, for example, is to let them have an extra inch too, just because it was funny, because obviously the orcs believe it and the rule was real. So hey, if the beakies painted their rhino red, certainly it's faster too, which is hilarious when you're playing against a Blood Angel army that had red rhinos for the regular guys and the black ones for Death Company, because Death Company is supposed to want to get into the assault first, but they actually went slower when they fought against the orcs. Hilarity. But yeah, so a whole new edition, the rule is still in there as an actual tactical rule. All right, moving along into editions, you get Assault of Blackreach, which is one of the best starter sets, if not the best starter set of all time, which of course had an entire Space Marine force and an entire Orc force, which still holds up to this day. And yeah, the rules changed for the movement on vehicles. Again, now you had like a cruising speed and an actual like all-out speed and all this other crazy stuff. And here's your Orc Codex, which I believe this one actually spanned a couple of editions. This, again, you're starting to get to the era where GW had that dip. Fifth kind of scaled back sales on a lot of things, and then they stopped selling online, and yeah, 6th and 7th were kind of the trash era, so to say. But anyways, here is the Codex. This is the 2014 version, and yeah, once again, we see the actual competitive rule. This is kind of cool. In the back, they have this fold-out reference section, but here's your Orc vehicle equipment. And there you go. Red paint job adds 1 inch only to the flat out moves, but still adds an inch. And yeah, to show you how weird the movement was during this time, your vehicles, all except Fasta walkers, you had stationary, combat speed, cruising speed, and flat out speed. So yeah, there was a lot going on. But yeah, how cool is it that even with edition changes and more changes to how vehicles worked and moved, you still kept that extra inch. So now we're going on what? 3rd, 4th, 5th, and into 6th, still having this rule. This is a huge chunk of time. All right, now you get into 2018. This particular rulebook, I believe, would be 8th edition now at this point, and now you're starting to lose it. Now you're still here in the lore, of course, obviously with Evil Sons again, but once again, they wear red armor and often paint their machines red too, firmly believing in the old Greenskins adage that red ones go Fasta. Now they've tied it into a clan culture, so now you had to run Evil Sons in order to get Red Ones Go Fasta. You would add 1 to the move characteristic of models with this culture, adding 2 instead if that model is a speed freak, 1 to advance and charge rules. Res Mecha also got some redder armor that added a move characteristic to a transport while the bearer is in it. So basically someone on foot had really red armor that made their transport faster. So while the rules still existed at this point, it started to get diluted. As you saw, Speed Freaks units all got an extra 1 inch to their movement, even if they weren't red, which, I mean, okay, sort of, sure. But if you ran specifically Evil Sons, then you could get a +1 for being an Evil Son and a +1 for being a Speed Freak. But notice that the actual requirement to be painted red is no longer in there. Now, they did have that one special rule for, you know, the one guy in armor to make his transport go faster. But yeah, that's where you start to see the rule dissipate. And now here is where the rule finally kind of disappears. First, you had Speed Freaks come out, which was a standalone set, which you can see right there, which is super, super awesome and very, very orky. But nowhere in here does it mention anything about red paint or red ones going faster, let alone having a rule for it. You also have the Psychic Awakening, Saga of the Beast stuff. Again, this is where Gazgul Thraka came back out as the big lean green that he is. And there's all sorts of fun and cool custom jobs in here. Nothing makes you go faster. Nothing is red. And then you get 9th edition and the Beast Snaga Army box set that relaunches the orcs. And the only thing you get in here is under Evil Sons. Now here's where you get, it gets fun. You get Red Ones Go Fasta here, but then here is their actual adage. The Evil Sons are firm believers in the old orc adage, the Red Ones Go Fasta. Notice Wunz is W-U-N-Z, like in 2nd edition, and Fasta is with the A, like in 3rd and newer. So that is where we got the spelling for this particular channel. But you can see you add 1 to the move characteristic of orcs with that culture, as well as 2 inches on the Speed Freaks. So yeah, once again, you do still kind of have a rule where you get to actually move further, but it's further divorced from having to actually paint the vehicle red. Now you're like slotted into Evil Sons. You can only play that culture. You lose all the other rules and things like that. And then the Speed Freaks also have their 1 inch further, regardless of whether or not they're Evil Sons. So you just really dilute what made this rule special. Which brings us to today. Now you're in 10th edition Warhammer 40k. This is where most of you came into the game, which is totally cool. And this is the 10th edition Orc Codex. This is the one we are all working with. And even though this edition specifically got rid of having clans or, armies that were, locked in, they still have it in the lore. And here is Evil Sons with, of course, Red Ones Go Fasta, just how we spell it here. And they talk about how the clan colors are lurid red and fiery orange because any orc with sense knows that vehicles painted in these are markable colors. This is the first time you see an orange, and also typically Evil Sons was yellow, not orange, but I digress. But orcs clad head to toe in them will travel faster than those that aren't. So yeah, now they're changing the lore. The Evil Sons are red and orange instead of red and yellow. All right, and that, yes, they believe that they go faster, but again, it's not in the rules, which here you get into Cult of Speed as the detachment, and nothing in this detachment has anything about going faster as an actual rule or being red. And that's why you've kind of lost this orky inherent knowledge that the red ones go Fasta. So yeah, there you go. There is your history lesson for today, all the way back through all 10 editions of Warhammer 40,000, showing you where this lore came from, where the knowledge that the red ones go Fasta came from, and why it was such a big part of orcdom for so long. It really was a physical rule. You're talking about 3rd through 8th editions, you physically went faster, and for most of that, your vehicle actually had to be painted red, which is just so stinking cool and thematic. I understand why G-Dubs has gone away from, like, you can only play Ultramarines as Ultramarines and things like that, and kind of getting rid of the clans so that people can paint their armies however they want. But you've always been able to do that, and I think having a few rules like this that are specifically tied into the paint scheme, especially something so innocuous as like 1 inch and you got to paint it red. It's not saying you got to be an Evil Son. It's not saying you got to be a certain clan or even a Speed Freak. You just got to paint it red. I think a return to that rule for 11th edition would be very welcome by the whole community, not just for competitive reasons, but I mean for the lore and for the world building and just for the coolness for it. All right, that's going to do it for this one. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, give me a like and a shout out down below. Again, super special thanks to Wah Tactics for starting this conversation. Go show him some love at his channel, link down below. And we'll see you in the next time. And until then, you know what you got to do. Wagon!